wonderful to be here with all these fabulous presenters. And the title is Innovations. I wanted to just have a few, I'm going to ask a few questions while you're thinking of your own for us to chew on a bit. And I'm going to divide it up a little bit of the way that Joy did, looking at first some things about goals, some things about materials, finding assessments. But I think Jamie did a great job of organizing this panel, and he also did tell people, you got to do it in 5 minutes so that there's much more chance to talk. So I hope you all realize that each of the panelists here would have loved to have spoken for an hour and a half and had plenty of material. So you can hopefully catch up to them in other points during your stay here. Each of them has a lot more to show. So I thought I would like to ask a question of everybody about the goals. Again, taking from the innovation standpoint. And I also want to say, I think Daniel's stuff did not show because of this screen thing here. It's really very gorgeously done. So look at that global thing. And really integrates beautifully standards and UDL. And that's a great resource. I hope you'll look at it. Matt emphasized the barrier reduction parts of his games. But those games also set new goals that are typically hard to do in classrooms. So I wanted to have everybody concentrate just for a moment on not how does UDL allow us to approach present goals, but what does UDL have to say or challenge us in making new goals, in innovating in the goals themselves? So just to frame any of the ways in which you might think about this, in what ways have any of us here found Common Core standards something which UDL needs to attack rather than provide access to? What does it mean to have more than barrier reduction in the light of what Common Core standards are? What should be uncommon about standards and goals that UDL allows? And I'm sure I'll just say one more thing. That if transportation was our goal in the early 20th century, then we set goals that are too short in the era of jet engines and rocket ships. So a lot of the technologies that we're going to be talking about in this whole conference allow us to reset the goals, that we actually can go places that nobody imagined 100 years ago. And so transportation needed to reset goals. So I just wanted to have a moment if people would think about where are we too short? Where are the Common Core standards too disabling all by themselves? What are the ways in which we need to rethink what the goals of education are from a UDL perspective? This is probably the hardest question. The other ones get easier. But so let me just see if anybody would like to jump in from the panel. Looks like Danny would.
Is this one? Okay. Sorry, I'm getting really close to you. So in terms of goals, one of the explicit goals of the Goal Book Toolkit is to help design multiple different learning goals that align to the Common Core. So in that sense, we're whether they're goals that are used in IEPs or whether they're goals that are used in lesson plans, we want to provide models that show that there's multiple ways to demonstrate mastery for a particular standard. It also drives our work in generating those model and example goals and using UDL. But I think right when we published our first set of goals that align to Common Core in reading, writing, and math, we immediately got tons of people saying, I want goals outside of Common Core. There's tons of areas that my students develop that aren't just reading, writing, and math. When are you going to develop these other areas? And so we've been furiously trying to keep up with developing goals and content in areas outside of the Common Core ourselves. What we found, though, is that we can still use the same UDL framework in thinking about representation, expression, and engagement, and differentiating on each one of those different levels. We use the exact same process with maybe some slight tweaks, whether we're looking at independent living skills, whether we're looking at social communication, whether we're looking at high school transition and what's going to happen for a student post-college. We set up goals and then we differentiate those goals using the same UDL process. So we found universal design for learning to not just be this thing that helps you differentiate Common Core. It's this way of thinking about any kind of learning task and learning outcome, and how do you structure, how do you present that outcome in multiple ways for students to be able to achieve.
Everybody doesn't have to answer that one. Or anyone else? Was Matt grabbing? Yeah.
I would just jump in here, David, and say that I think it's most beneficial when the students are able to design their own goals, right? That's our end outcome. And that gets lost in many of the classrooms where teachers are completely focused on teaching to the test. And I'm just hopeful that all of you out there will go forward and implement UDL and ask your students and teach your students to use UDL so that they can design their own goals rather than focusing on teaching specifically to those Common Core standards.
Big part of that.
And I can only say I'm living that and totally 100% with that as a parent of a child with a disability that's definitely frustrated with that aspect. The one component is I'm just requiring this, but I think in terms of the growth of the online and the competency base and how some of the online learning is focused on the competency base, which offers personalized learning, but it's not done within the UDL framework specifically, as you say, aligned with the goals. It very well could be more aligned with limitations of too much and not directly related to the needs of the individual. So they're making growth and they're meeting some competency, but is it aligned with what they actually need? And so I think in the online world, we can be more and more relevant.
Well, I think I certainly agree with all of the panelists, and the student-centered learning is a big focus for us because we've certainly come a long way from sage on the stage to students actually organizing and creating their own learning opportunities. But my big thing for the future, and it's sort of a bit of a goal, is why we have to have assistive technology, educational technology, or special education products and regular education products, in the sense that I think that all could really mean all, and that if we work together, because we have so much expertise, I feel sometimes I'm in two different sandboxes with the groups that are designing special education and regular education technology, and I just think if we get everybody together in the same sandbox, that we might be able to create for us at the grassroots level something that teachers can use, cast a bit of a broader universal design for learning, and much like Joy said, we might have a few kids that are going to fall through the cracks. But I think in the future, I'd like to see that, especially our designers, looking at what is possible.
And even though we said we didn't know what to answer, of course we all have to answer. So I think one of the things that's important to me when I think about the Common Core goals and students with more intensive support needs, a lot like the ones that you were talking about, there are a couple of things that I think are really important related to the technology and the addressing the Common Core and any goals for that matter, and the way we can up our goals for students with more severe disabilities. The thing for me about technology, because I spent much of my life in assistive technology, and probably still do, is that it's a window, and you get to see things that a student can do, and a student gets to see things they can do. And it's sort of like the aha, I know you can do that now, so look at all these other things I'm going to have you do too, which has some pushback sometimes, but it's a really important piece, and without the technology we can't see those windows. If you think back about that variability slide where I was talking about students who perhaps they were lower than average in things like reading or math, but very high in other areas. And so I think what thinking about the Common Core and the expectation that we would address rigorous goals, which is certainly something all that's embedded in universal design for learning, helps us think about, okay, how can we make this happen? And then if we've started thinking about sort of a changing criteria, moving toward a goal, that you may move toward it for a long time. and I think that's important. I don't